this live? Can you hear me? Okay, okay, great. First of all, thank you very much for coming today. It's wonderful to see you. Thank you to Debbie for organizing this along with the participating organizations. Thank you for having us. I want to welcome and thank very much Alan West for coming. Yes, you are my friend, and I always appreciate you. And it's not just that I love this man. Oh, absolutely, come on. But I also want to thank you for standing behind me for the past decade, and your support has meant, and it still does mean the world to me, so thank you very much. It's not easy being a friend of a felon. Ladies and gentlemen, Katie Hopkins and I have recently teamed up as Katie and the Wolff. So you are one of the first groups of people to hear us speak together. And you're in for a treat, I think. Maybe not in the way that you think you would be, but you will hear some truths that may not be pleasant. So, it was a year ago, almost a year ago, that Katie and I met for the first time right here in Dallas. I admit that after reading her book called Rude, I wasn't really so sure if she and I would get along. We do get along. We get along very well, and I think we make a very, very good team. She's very different from me, as you will see. You can also see that already. But we are different in many other ways. But we are joined by a single cause, and that is most important. We are here to defend the values of Western civilization and Judeo-Christian values. This is what is dear to our heart. For those of you who don't know Katie Hopkins, is there anyone in here who doesn't know Katie Hopkins? I will still explain it to you, who she is. She is a rogue from the road, often referred to as the biggest bitch in Britain. She spends her time traveling to the most unwelcome places, be it the no-go zones in Sweden, or the migrant camps in Calais, or the white farmlands under attack in South Africa. Jihadis planned an attack to behead her in the United Kingdom, to shut her up. And as you can see, thankfully, they have failed. And I say they have failed. They better fail in the future too. She still has her head where it belongs, and I'm thankful for that. She will tell you more about that later. As for me, I am a mother and a housewife. But behind my house coat and many cuddles, I do have a lot of cuddling to do at home, I am the unexpected face behind the recent European Court of Human Rights decision that took away my right to speak freely, because it ruled that the right of religious groups not to be offended is greater than my right to speak. I am the woman who questioned rhetorically, what do you call a 56-year-old man who marries a 6-year-old and has sexual relations with her when she is 9, if not pedophilia? Now, this sentence I just said, I would not be able to repeat in Austria. Thanks to your Constitution, your First Amendment, I am free to say what is on my mind. I will not repeat this in Austria or in any place in Europe. So, with that, I will now hand over to the lovely Katie, who will introduce herself a little more and talk to you about why we're here.
So, thank you for that introduction, and thank you all very much for being here. I really appreciate it. Elizabeth usually gives me a bit of a hard time on that intro, so this is my chance to have my own back. So here I go. No, Elizabeth is really the brains behind this outfit. She is the sensible one. She's the smart one. She's the one that knows where we're supposed to be and when. And she's the one that will have read the email thoroughly, so she knows what's actually going on, as opposed to me, who's probably skim-read it and just picked up the first couple sentences and nodded a little bit. So that's kind of Elizabeth and I's relationship. It was funny, you know, we were at an event just a couple of days ago, a very conservative event, and some of our team that are here who are from the church did try to articulate to me, Katie, this is a very, this is a religious and highly morally motivated group of people, Katie, as in, try not to be too naughty. Anyway, I'm kind of overly tactile, as many of you will have known, already endured my cuddles coming into this room. I grabbed Elizabeth. So there's this gentleman that I'd met. I said, hello, I'm Katie. And I went, oh, you must meet my partner, Elizabeth. And I grabbed her lovingly like this. I went, come and meet Elizabeth. And you could see him go, oh. He looked like a cat that just licked the carpet the wrong way. And I saw the horror in his face, which, I mean, it is a kind of horrific thought. I get it. And I was like, no. My speaking partner, Elizabeth. I'm a married mother of 3, it's okay. So I have to be a little careful with my language. Do tell me off today if I speak too quickly. It's one of the things I've been doing. What was it your expression was, Kat? We just don't hear that fast. Now, the reason I'm just popping up here for a second before I hand back to Elizabeth is to say, so what? Because that is true. So what? So what you guys are here? So what? What's going on in Europe? So what? And I get that. It's a question we should ask of ourselves all the time before we speak. But the so what is, we're only just a little bit ahead of you. And when I say ahead, I don't mean in a kind of leadership way. I mean down a very dark path that I don't want any of you going down any further than you're already walking. You know, I suffer the consequences of having the tiny Muslim mayor of London, now known as Londonistan. Political power now passes from one Muslim to another in the UK, and it is very difficult to break that cycle. And as I glance across here over the pond to this country that I love so much, you just watch Keith Ellison hand the baton of power straight to Ilhan Omar. I watched Rashida, the first thing she did when she was elected by the people who she represents, who are densely packed, one monoculture of people, first thing she did was wave the Palestinian flag. Now, that is not the America I know. So the so what, I think, is that the stories we will tell you, our truths, are a glimpse into a future none of us want. And I think at that point I'll hand back to the Wolff, and she will give you her credentials. Why does she have the right to speak on this subject?
Thank you, Katie. I do believe I have a right to speak on this subject, because I am a diplomat's daughter who grew up not only in the United States, which explains my English language skills, but also in countries like Iran before and during the revolution of 1979, Iraq, where I attended church service on Christmas Eve in 1983, but I also lived and experience the invasion of Kuwait in 1990. I woke up on August 2nd, 1990, and I saw helicopters hovering above the city of Kuwait. To this day, I do not like the sound of helicopters. They frighten me. To this day, I don't like seeing tanks because I saw all those tanks rolling into Kuwait. I appreciate that there are tanks, but I'm afraid of them. I don't like them. Let me back up to Iran, because what happened in Iran has shaped my life and changed me. I grew up in Iran, and I was 6 and 7 and 8 years old. I attended first and second grade at the German school in Tehran. And my family, my mother, my father, my sister, and I led a very happy life in 1977 and 78. Trips to the desert, an Austrian beer brewery, life was good. And all of a sudden, with Ayatollah Khomeini coming back and taking over the country and turning this beautiful country into a theocracy where women all of a sudden had no rights and had to cover up, where all of a sudden there was no more Pepsi Cola to be found, not only because it was American, but also because it reminded people, Iranians, of whiskey. And all of a sudden, this 6, 7, and 8-year-old child saw a completely different way of life. Like I said, a theocracy. Hate. I saw that anger in people's eyes. I remember all that. For instance, I could not attend most of 2nd grade in Iran. Why? Because on most days there were so many dead bodies in front of the school that they could not remove those corpses before the children attended school. So most of 2nd grade was just gone for me. I did manage to graduate, just so you know, both high school and university, so 2nd grade is not that big of a deal. But for me it was, because I couldn't go to school. On July 31st, 1980, our Iranian maid burned down our house with my mother and my sister and me inside taking a nap. Guess who came to our rescue? American-made fire engines. We barely survived. So back then, as a young child, I saw that hatred all of a sudden in this woman, how she flipped. That Iranian maid who loved and cared for us all that time, all of a sudden flipped and started hating everything Western, and we suffered. So we left in 1980, shortly before the war began. My dad was actually on the last plane out before the actually Iran-Iraq war started. And in 1983, we returned to Chicago. My father was posted there as a consul general of Austria. And here I went to school at the Academy of the Sacred Heart, 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th grades. And what made a lasting impact on me was one thing. I had a wonderful social studies teacher, and as 8th graders, we were back then forced to study. I say forced to study because we couldn't graduate without a test on the United States Constitution. It was the make it or break it test back then. Everybody was shaking with fear because this test was such a challenge. But the first reaction that I had as a 14-year-old in the midst of her puberty was, why do I have to study the United States Constitution when I should be studying my own Constitution first? But of course I didn't get a choice because I was in an American school, which by the way should be the way it is, you know. We shouldn't have migrants studying their own Constitution. They should be studying the one that they are actually, you know, the American. If you're in school in America, you should be studying the American Constitution. No discussion about it. And I get that now. I get it. I understand it. But the point that I'm making here is this social studies teacher taught me the Constitution so well that I can tell you, I believe from the bottom of my heart, from everything inside my body, that the United States Constitution is the greatest document ever written, ever made, ever produced. And the First and Second Amendments. I can tell you that because we have no First Amendment, we have no Second Amendment. As Katie will tell you, guns are being taken away from people. We cannot defend ourselves. Look at what happened in New Zealand. The first thing they did is ban all guns, all weapons. How are you going to defend yourself? And the first thing I asked my husband when he was deployed to Mali 6 years ago is, are you going to be able to defend yourselves using a weapon? No more United Nations peacekeeper where you don't have any guns or weapons or anything to defend yourself with. You arm up and you defend yourself and your men. That's what I want. So, I'm going to go forward. I already told you about 1990 when I was in Kuwait. I was a hostage of Saddam Hussein. I will not tell you about that because that would keep us here until 6 p.m. at least, and then Katie still has to go, and that wouldn't be fun because she'd be hungry. We don't want that. So if you are interested in the story about what happened to me in Kuwait, come up, see me afterwards. I'll tell you where to look for an interview that describes that ordeal. In 1997, I returned to Kuwait, worked at the Austrian embassy stamping about 3,000 visas a year. I met my husband there, who's an Austrian citizen. He was in the United Nations peacekeeping force. But apart from that, I experienced Ramadan and true Islam for the first time. I was adult enough. I understood what was going on. And I always like to say the first Ramadan is exotic. It's different. You look at all these people fasting, and they actually don't look very happy doing that. But they do it, and it's, yeah, I mean, I have a certain respect for that. As long as I don't have to do it, I respect that. It's not a problem for me. The second Ramadan started getting on my nerves. I was kind of annoyed with people telling me what to do and not to do. By the third Ramadan, the rebel inside me came out, and I went to the visa section where, you know, I took the passports to be stamped. I received the passports to be stamped, and I had a roll, and inside the roll was Austrian salami. I just needed to be a rebel. It started to get oppressive. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Because what Islam does is it doesn't keep to itself. It wants you also to partake in these rituals that are not your own. And that's what annoyed me. And yeah, thankfully I kept my mouth shut, because they probably would have, the Kuwaitis would have kicked me out. Not good. I would not go there today. It's not safe for me. After 4 years of Kuwait, I turned into a masochist and added a year of Libya. A year of Libya under Gaddafi. I can tell you it was a year of hell for me. It was probably the worst time of my life, because it was a very big challenge living there. Very little food. I had to import my own toilet paper, drinking water. There was nothing to be done there. It was boring. There was no life there. The only excitement I had was on September 11th, that I was in Libya, and I had my landlord barging into my apartment without knocking and screaming, "The Jews did it! The Jews did it!" That was enough for me, and after 9/11, I left the country, settled back in Austria with my husband, had my beautiful daughter, and in case you're wondering, she's 14. She's a very lovely girl. And then I started learning more about Islam, trying to connect the dots of what I saw, what I experienced, what I did, and learning why all of this is going on. Why little girls are being married off to older men. No offense to older men, but you know, it doesn't work, the combination of old man and young girl. No good, at least in our culture. And I started speaking out. I gave seminars on the dangers, warning about the dangers of Islam. I never said anything about a Muslim. I always talked about the teachings of Islam. But in one of these seminars that I gave in 2008, we were having a discussion about Muhammad, the prophet of Islam, and how he married a 6-year-old girl and consummated the marriage when she was 9. And that ultimately got me in trouble, and I was convicted of, they wanted to get me on hate speech charges, the establishment. That didn't fly. So they got me on denigration of religious teachings of a legally recognized religion in Austria. And I had been fighting for 10 years. I say had been because the case is now closed, and it's been closed for a week now. So before I came here, I received notice, very bland, saying the appeal by the I appealed to the European Court of Human Rights, which is a sort of Supreme Court of Europe, appealing for my case to be heard again, because it has such a detrimental effect on free speech in Europe. This is not about me, it's about everybody. And the European Court said, no, we're not going to hear this anymore, case closed. So it's now, free speech is in effect dead. It's over in Europe, which is why I am here. I will tell you more about that later. And with that, I hand over to Katie for her life story. I do ask you to keep your paper towels or whatever you have ready, because it is a tough story to listen to. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Good job. So, I am a white, Christian, conservative, married mother of 3 children. They are 15, 14, and 10. And where I come from, I'm virtually an endangered species. I'm right up there with the white rhino. And I tell you, I started off as a young girl, I think, once upon a time. I was sponsored through university by the Intelligence Corps. I'd always wanted to join the army. I decided I would be the first female general. That's why I think I walk like this. And so the Intelligence Corps sponsored me through university. My father said they must have got muddled up and got the wrong person. My dad. Actually, we were on the phone with him this morning. I was showing Elizabeth where I got my nose from. Father? My daughters still take the mickey out of my nose, and I'm like, do you not see where this is going? Anyway, after university, came out there with an economics degree, went to the Royal Military Academy, Sandhurst. I came out of the Royal Military Academy as one of 8 girls. We started as a platoon of 30 girls, and we came out as a group of 8, I guess, virtually men. I guess Sandhurst is kind of like your West Point, just, you know, a bit better. One of the secrets I have, I guess I have quite a few. I like to think I tell everybody everything about my life, but one of the secrets I had, and I am a recovering epileptic. I was born with epilepsy, and it became more pronounced at the age of 18 with fits. And I hid those fits, if I'm honest with you. It's not something I'm kind of proud of, because I respect integrity and everything. But because I so desperately wanted to be in the military and fight for my country, I believed that I was bigger and better than epilepsy too. I could fight that, and I could be a member of the forces and fight for my country. At a certain point, the medical officer for the Intelligence Corps found out about my epilepsy on my medical records, and I was discharged for that. Now, at the time I was sad, but I recognize now as something more of an adult that actually an epileptic with a semi-automatic weapon might not be such a good idea. So I landed in Civvy Street in the commercial world, and I joined actually a whole bunch of ex-military, mostly men, and we were in corporate world, in consultancy, and we were bringing military principles to the corporate world. So principles of turning up on time, 5 minutes before the 5 minutes before, or you're late. Delegation and moral accountability. If something goes wrong and you're the leader, you own that. No one else does. As the leader, you're in charge. Principles of command and control. So making it such that if something happens to you, your troops will still know where they're headed and will still know the mission that they will continue to deliver. And we did really well. On Madison Avenue, I was there for 5 years. And during that time, I watched a really great program with a really great guy behind the desk. He had a bald head of ginger hair. And that was my introduction to Trump. And I loved that man from the off, very long time ago. And The Apprentice for me was something really remarkable. These candidates would try, most of them were idiots, but some of them were quite smart. And by the end, they had a fantastic job, you know, doing huge construction projects, sort of the military style of command that I recognized, the leadership you needed. So when I hopped back to the UK to have a couple of children, I applied for the British Apprentice. Now, the British Apprentice is very like the American Apprentice, but just a really rubbish version of it. There is no real job at the end of it. It's sort of a contrived idea because it's all for TV. The guy that runs it is not Trump with his great head of ginger hair. It's a very small man who's precisely this high. And I know that because I measured. He's called Lord Sugar, or Little Lord Sugar. And I tell you all this, and it's trivia and it's trite, and I respect that too. I tell you it because, so I got to the end of that process, mostly because everybody else was idiots, and I was the woman who was prepared to tell people direct to their faces, no, you're no good at this job. No, I don't think you're correct for this task. I'm better. Please go home. Now, that didn't make me massively popular in the UK, and I earned the title biggest bitch in Britain. But the reason I tell you that story is just because I got to the end of the process, then I recognized I really didn't want the job of somebody that was this high, and so I fired Lord Sugar. So it's like firing Trump, but not as important. And I'm telling you it because that's what put me in the public eye. That explains the platform. And then I went from being this woman who was on The Apprentice to this woman who had lots of opinions about everything. So many things get on my nerves, and I am not polite about them. So it annoys me, for example, that parent and child parking spaces are right next to the front door of the supermarket, because if anybody needs some exercise, it's mothers that are sitting home on their ass all day. You know, I did, so what am I, 130 pounds? I'm not that big. Because I'm supposed to be a monster, people always assume that I'm massive, you know. And people are always like, but you're so small. Well, they've heard me on the radio and they think my voice is big. So somehow I'm not as big as I'm supposed to be. I know that. But at 130 pounds, because it annoys me that people always say, oh, you're so lucky to be skinny. Oh, you're so lucky to be skinny. You're so lucky to be skinny. And I'm like, no, I'm not lucky to be skinny. I just don't stuff food in my face, and I do quite a bit of exercise. So to be really annoying, I put on half my body weight and lost it again. 3 months on, 3 months off, to prove that fat people are lazy. 50 pounds in 3 months. That is not pleasant when you're someone like me who doesn't actually put on weight that easy. But there was a point to it. And when I lost the weight, I lost it without a gym, without any special equipment, without a dietitian or some training. It was about a regular man and woman in the street, how you can do this if you want to by just doing 10,000 steps a day. So that was Fat Story, but I'm using that to explain that I really am that annoying. Like, if I want to prove a point, I really will go to those sorts of measures to prove my point. There is no end point to me. I got given flowers for the baby I wasn't going to have because all my weight went right on here. That was going to be fantastic. I was going to have these enormous boobs for the first time in my life. Sorry if there's any pastors in the building. This is why my religious friends worry about me. So I thought it was going to be brilliant and I was going to be really busty. But in fact, all my weight went on here because I'd had babies before. So I was sent flowers for that. And I was given first place in the bathroom queue for the baby I wasn't having. Just took that one, thank you very much, I'll have that. I'm just being fat to be annoying, but thank you. Anyway, it got to a point where actually being trite and being annoying is not actually enough. And when you look around you and your country is starting to go to the dogs, you realize that with a platform, with a national column in the biggest newspaper in the UK, The Sun, and then Daily Mail, Mail Online, appearances on ITV, the BBC, a national syndicated radio show that was the most popular in its time slot, you start to realize that, and people start to remind you actually, that you have a platform and you better start using it for something more meaningful than just being goddamn annoying. And then I started asking questions of the stuff that I saw about me, of my country that I started to no longer recognize, of a country I love. I started to ask, why is it that we tiptoe around the cultures that choose to join us and fail to stand up for the culture they chose to join? Tell me, if Islam is so fantastic, why do Muslims always seek refuge and accommodation in Christian countries? Why not stay in Saudi, and why won't Saudi take them? Now you start asking those questions. You start asking, why is this small town in this small village that I used to know now 97% Muslim? Why out of the 4 or 5 boroughs in London are whites a minority? I don't care about colour, but why are whites a minority in Bradford, in Birmingham, in Luton, in Leicester? Why is it by 2050 Muslim births will outnumber Christian births in my country? If I shout Muhammad in a school playground, 255 kids come running. That's what's going on in the UK right now. Now, you start saying those sort of things, and the government wants to silence you pretty fast. you become, I was pretty unpopular before, but you become very unpopular with the establishment, and you become someone that can no longer be allowed to have a platform. So within 4 months, I think, the radio show being the best listened to radio show, I lost my job at the radio studio. I was fired for a tweet where I said we needed a solution to Islamist terror. I think we still do. I lost my newspaper column. It was one of the best read columns because I covered the migrant crossing across the Med. Migrants coming from Libya through southern Italy, destroying the countries they went through and eventually ending up at Calais. A group of political and religious leaders campaigned to my editor to have removed for being there reporting on migrants crossing the Med. Don't ask me why the chief rabbi doesn't want me talking about that. I don't know. So I lost my newspaper column, and then they came at me for my personal finances. I have businesses, but this was personal finances. They came at me with legal kind of court cases against me for things I'd said online, things I'd said on social media. They created a new law, because there aren't really laws around social media because it's a new area. They created a new law, especially for me, that serious harm is done to somebody at the moment of publication, and that you do not have to prove serious harm is committed. Now, by creating that law, and that became law because I was found guilty time after time, I couldn't settle out of court because, cunningly enough, the settlement was going to go to a migrant charity. And I refuse, fundamentally, to be financially supporting illegal movement of people into my country where my elderly people can't get cataract operations because there's no room at the NHS. They created a new law that made me guilty of causing serious harm for just writing comments online, and I had to sell my family home to pay the debts that they created against my name. So my radio show, my income, my column, my family home. And I say none of this because I have pity. I have no self-pity whatsoever. I chose to do this. I choose to do it now. I love doing what I do. And I believe if you think something and you have the moral integrity, you owe it to people to talk about it. You know, I was supposed to fight for thank you. Don't be nice to me. I'm not good at people being nice to me. I'm very good at people being nasty. Set me off. I was supposed to fight for my country, and I respect the epilepsy thing, I get it. But now I fight for my country in a different way. And if I don't like it, I can go home, zip it, sit on my sofa, shut up. I love what I do, I love what we're doing. But the reason now I have this drive to move forward is because I know that so many of us are increasingly silenced. I know self-censorship is already happening before you open your mouth. Can I say that? Is it okay to say this? Should I need to say, well, I really like everybody of color, and this is not about race, and it's not about religion, but we have to preface ourselves already before we can open our mouths because we're self-censoring, because we don't want this stuff to happen to us. And that's my country where people cannot speak out. This morning, 6 o'clock in my bed, reading my emails, a lady, terrified, coming to me for help, just as a stranger, because her workplace has launched an investigation against her because she put something on social media against the jihadi brides, the ones trying to return. Her employer has picked up something where she said, no, I don't think they should be allowed to return, and they are now investigating her for a tweet. Not even a Twitter account for her company, her private, personal opinions. We just had a little lady, I love her, she's a little blogger, she just writes her opinions online. Very popular account because she's just a sweet person reporting from her kitchen. She said there are only 2 biological sexes. You are not allowed to hold that position in the UK today. Because of her blog online where she said there's 2 biological sexes, she says what Elizabeth said. I respect that everybody might believe differently. I respect that other people do different things. But she said, I believe there's only 2 sexes. The police came to her door, they arrested her, and they put her in a cell for 7 hours. After the Christchurch massacre at the mosque, the first reaction in the UK, after we have 8 stabbings a night of young black boys under the age of 14, more police at the mosque door, on the other side of the planet. 3 people arrested in Manchester for questioning whether the reaction was proportionate, arrested for thinking. And that is my country right now. I fear for my country right now. And it isn't just that we lose this sense of a place to belong. It isn't just that the Jews are leaving Paris in their thousands. It isn't just that families just like mine, and including mine, are looking towards Hungary and Poland for a new place to belong. It isn't just that there is a silent exodus underway because of the Islamification of my country. It's the fact that it's coming here. That's the thing that terrifies me the most, because I tell you, if I look for hope, I look to you guys. 63 million Americans that voted for Trump. I will hug each and every one of them if I get given the gift of life to live long enough to do exactly that. I will do that. And so it is up to me and Elizabeth. I will pass to Elizabeth in just a second for her kind of final warning. But it's up to me and Elizabeth, up to us, and there are many of us. And if we're clear about what we think and what we know, and we stand together, which is why I love that your groups joined together today. We stand together, we can fight back against this. So there's just a couple of final warnings that we want to give, if we may. So I'll hand to Elizabeth first.
Well, thank you, Katie, for this very moving life story of yours. You did leave a couple of things out, which I won't repeat because it's up to her to say them. But it was bad enough what she said. And if I just may add before I give you my final warning, it's not just in London where the stabbings take place. We do have that in Europe, in Austria and in Vienna in particular. It is horrifying to read the newspapers every morning in Vienna, my hometown. And it is horrifying for me to see my daughter off to school every morning because I don't know how she will return, in what state. Is she going to make it from school back home? Is she going to even make it to school and then back home? This is what we go through every day. Every single day. And every single day I thank God that it wasn't my daughter who was raped. But it could be her the next day. Don't think I'm exaggerating. This is what I do every single day. She's now in Austria with my husband. Do I know if I'm going to see her again? I don't. I pray that I do. I assume that I do, but I don't know. So my message to you, my warning to you, what I ask you to do is, unsurprisingly, given that I no longer enjoy the right to freedom of speech in Austria and in all of Europe, I certainly wouldn't go to the UK after what I heard. Definitely not. That decision of the European Court of Human Rights, after that, last week, the news wires went wild. And one commentator, he is unsurprisingly of Iranian origin, said that this was the day that freedom of speech died in Europe. I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, I did all I could in Europe. But I will continue my fight here in the United States. I will speak in the United States because you still enjoy your First Amendment right. But I see it increasingly under attack. And that is why Katie and I have teamed up. We will go to the places in the United States and we will report from those places. We will look, talk to people on the ground and report back to groups like you. That is my mission because it's my right to speak. And I will continue doing that. Let me finish up with Katie and her warning, and then we will finish up. Thank you very much.
So the thing I missed out is, I guess not only did they take my house and my job and my radio job, there was a plot to behead me in the UK. Two jihadis wanted my head. They, one of them, the lady, the female, wanted it as her wedding present. I mean, most people just sign up for a list at Macy's, but I guess they kind of do it differently where they come from. The female, she was called, I think. I didn't quite catch it. And she was going to marry a guy, a really good-looking guy, looked a lot like his dad and his brother and his sister. Funny that. Probably married one of them. He was called Akafarapahavatach. And they wanted my head. They went out and bought a mannequin, a shop dummy, a plastic dummy, and a hunting knife, and they practiced stabbing and chopping the head off. Then the following evening, in the middle of the night in my little home in the West Country, a group of men arrived, dressed all in black. They were from the Secret Services in the UK, and they installed panic alarms in my house. They came in, they told me there was no question they were coming into my home where my children and my husband were. And on the 3rd floor, they put a black box. This is how these panic alarms work. And I was told that were my home to be entered, they would run. I had to run to the top of my house and shake the panic box, past the bedrooms of my children. And then a newspaper that works for the left, the Daily Mirror, Piers Morgan's involved with it, printed the floor plan of my home online on the internet and my children's bedrooms. And then the government also sponsored, this starts to get slightly bizarre, the government sponsored a play, they paid for the play, and the play was called The Assassination of Katie Hopkins. There were billboards for that. Now, I don't mind any of that stuff, and I omit it sometimes because I feel like it's sort of a distraction. It feels a little bit all about me. But I think the joy of my final warning, as I get warned from the back of the room as well, that I need to shut up. Sit down, woman. Don't even think about it. I'm finishing what I started. With respect. I'm also sleeping at our house tonight, so this could be awkward. My 3 things, really quickly. Number 1, your family, your traditional family unit. That's what we have the power to look after. We can make sure our children stay children for as long as we can. Mine will never have sex education lessons at school. Not as long as I am here. No. Number 2, you love your country, you're patriotic about your country, and thank the Lord you have your flag. I am not allowed to fly the English flag because it's now racist. It's a symbol of white nationalism. Keep flying your flag. Get that flag in your tavern. You get it up on your walls. You have it everywhere. And finally, your land. The South African white farmers being genocided told me, I spent 3 weeks with them. They will die in their boots for their love of the land. I think we would all make that same commitment. I made that commitment a long time ago, and by doing those 3 things, we can protect the America we all love. Thank you very much. Okay, now you can.
So we have time for just a few questions if you'd like. We can take Q&A. The only thing I'd say about that, I heard a fun way to say it, which is make a question short enough you can say it in one breath, but no stories, no long speeches. Just if you have questions, they would love to answer your questions. Are we passing this mic? I think we're passing the mic around. Let me do that.
I have a question for Katie, please. Katie, how effective is it for Americans to blog and comment on sites like Breitbart London and the Daily Mail, even possibly Going Postal, which is UK site? Is that helpful? Does it resonate? Is that a good thing for our cousins in the UK?
Yes, Americans speaking out, Americans posting, American conversations, and that's why really we needed Fox News and others to stand firm and not start to become some kind of liberal mouthpiece, because we need a platform. We had Fox closed down in the UK. So the more you guys talk and speak your minds, blog, add your comments, it lets us feel like, it makes people feel less alone. And the real problem with all of this, the silencing, isn't just less noise, it's the isolation and the feeling of loneliness. You know, I have 81-year-olds that write to me saying that they're glad their time is nearly up so they don't have to see their country fall. And this is the heartbreaking stuff, and that's why you speaking helps all of them. Thank you. I'll cover Brexit after, so if you want to come find me, because it's off topic. Thank you.
How much of this governmental support in some of these countries for migration and not being limited is related to concern about the birth rates of the regular, the older Europeans, and they want cheap labor, number one, and then number two, ancillary to that is, do they really think these people can get trained and be paid in your countries?
They're hoping to have them trained. I think they're being unrealistic. I mean, there's plenty of evidence that it's impossible to train these people. The new Austrian government, center-right government, is actually implementing very, very good policies now to send these young men back to Afghanistan, even though they are in the process of becoming apprentices. They're getting their apprenticeship. Of course, you have the liberal left in Austria screaming murder because of that. Oh, the young men, we need them, and even if we don't need them, we'll still keep them. But the Austrian government is very, very, very strict about that, and I applaud them for that. I think we're being naive if we believe we can train these people to become Germans who are very diligent. We all know the German trait of diligence and hardworking, and it just doesn't work. Just like Katie and I probably would not feel at home in Afghanistan in the long term. I mean, the burqa doesn't really look good on us, and it hides your nose, but still. Anyway, so I don't think they know it's not going to work. They still want to do it anyway. It's a liberal trait, I suppose.
Can you tell us where Sharia law is practiced in the UK? Can you describe?
The list is long, but I'll still hand over to Katie.
The extent of
This
that.
is long, yeah. So I'm just thinking of two examples. One, Savile Town. I've just come back from there. I've made a documentary called Homeland. Savile Town in the UK. Think Yorkshire tea, rolling hills, old mills where whole communities used to work. Savile Town is 97% Muslim. 97% Muslim. Now, I am all for diversity, actually. I consider myself to be an extreme liberal. But where is the diversity when you are 97% Muslim and next to the mosque that I visited is the satanic, oh, that was weird. That was a slip, right? That's so weird. How did that happen? Is the Sharia court. So that is next door. That's so strange. Next door to the mosque. Now, we just had a case in Edinburgh where a girl, 20 years old, was found on wasteland screaming, help me, save me, Muslim girl. She was alight. She was set on fire. Doused in fuel, set on fire. The police have just issued the report on that, and they said there are no suspicious circumstances. The mosque, who has acknowledged it's a sister that was involved, says that good Muslims don't question what happened to a sister and that the family have dealt with an issue. And that is the Sharia courts in operation, and our police compliant with the Sharia courts in areas of Birmingham. Quickly, the imam selects the police officers allowed to patrol the area, and the Muslim Police Association are the police in the area. Then you have courts that are Sharia courts. So we're a long way down that road. Is that okay?
If I just quickly may add one sentence, we have mosques in Austria where the imams bring the ballots and decide, and he tells people how to vote. He has all the ballots for the people. They do whatever they need to do according to the imam, and then the ballots are taken away. I don't think they're going to vote for a center-right party or anything like that. So that's how it works.
I venture to say that we are already self-censoring ourselves here in America. I bought a Make America Great hat again in Washington, D.C. I would not dare wear it for what I have seen happening in our how can we best counteract Sharia here in the schools, in the press,
in the government everywhere else.
Okay, so how to counter Sharia in brief. The thing we can do as parents, and it's something I do a lot, is share the stuff that makes us safer. So we have a lot of mosque visits organized by our school. I don't mind a mosque visit. I'm happy with one. I don't need 3 in a term. My children do not attend mosque visits anymore. I will not have them indoctrinated. Same with the sex ed classes that says you must accept LGBTQ narratives as they are. You know, we need to give children a chance to make their own minds up. So in terms of the Sharia, we already it already is being indoctrinated into our system. The legal system in the UK has already accepted it. Our police authorities have already accepted it. So for you, it's putting support behind your lawmakers that will stand up for you. And I fear there are far too many Republicans right now who are in danger of being far too close to actually being covert Democrats.
Okay, Frank.
They are working. They are not working for your president. They are not working to support your president or your votes. They are working to attract the Muslim votes that they want to keep themselves in political power. And it is your job to get them out of office. Call them out. Get them out. Thank you for the question.
Okay, folks, let's just give a great round of applause for both Elizabeth Savage Wolff and Katie Hopkins. But we're not done yet. We're just saying thank you.